we don't play football in fantasy. Well, some of you do. I don't.
Nice.
But it's not about what could have happened. It's about what did happen and what does happen. And what we saw was the most egregious no call in the history of the game. But what's sad about it is the fact that, listen, I've been at all the games we've lost. I was in Seattle when we lost in 13. I saw the Beastquake run of Marshawn. I was there last year in Minnesota. I'm not going to take away the play from Diggs, but they were football plays. This was about business, I think. And what happens is when you see something like this and there's no way to correct it, you know, you start to glom onto the conspiracies. And it's just, you know, there's no way that should happen ever. I understand that sports is constantly, in all sports, there's the close call that we'll be arguing about forever. Whether one thing happened was, whether it was a foul or not a foul, or was he safe, or was that pitch inside a strike or not. That's subjective. This was so not subjective. This was so clear. And without some way of correcting it, you put an asterisk next to this league. You start to put, in a year that has been so horrible for the NFL, this assault on the First Amendment where players can't protest. You know, the first year that sportsbook is allowed and something like this happens with the history of, you know, Tim Donaghy and the NBA and that scandal, you start to wonder. For me, it was like a Matrix moment. I can take those other losses and be so hurt that we lost in the final play of a playoff game as a Saints fan, in Minnesota last year, the Miracle, and all the others that I mentioned. San Francisco, when Vernon Davis and Alex Smith ate us up in a minute. But with something like this, if you don't have it, for me, it was a Matrix moment. I'll never be able to look at the game again.
Well, I'm sure the league will definitely investigate anything that you're talking about Donaghy or anything of that nature. Now, but all that said, though, Wendell, I can safely attest that when you talk about business, that I think CBS, with all due respect to the Rams, and that's the business of the NFL, would be the network and the ratings and the interest and the dollars and the cents. Having Breeze versus Brady would be something I think the NFL would put their head on the pillow and be very happy about in Atlanta, for sure. So what do you mean by the business aspect of it? Just to provide a little bit of pushback on that front to you.
No, of course. Listen, I've thought about it. You know, what happens is you start to wonder, just like at the beginning of the season, you put in new rules, and the league comes up and it says, you know, I want you to kind of look at this head-to-head. You know, I want you to make those calls. You know, in preseason, I want people to get accustomed to the fact that this is a new way you have to tackle. You better put your face mask in the guy's chest and not the top of the crown. So I want you to throw some more flags to make sure that we get these players accustomed to changing their way of approaching a tackle and not leading with the head and not spearing. And just like you, as a league, go to your officials and tell them, I want you to throw some more flags. If you don't have a way to rectify something like this, the fan starts to believe that you come to your officials and say, hey, last 5 minutes of the game, you know, this would be a better storyline, you know? And so I kind of want to go this way. And, hey, I'm a Saints fan. I thought about this a lot the past 2 days. Go back to Week 16 against Pittsburgh. I'm sure the Pittsburgh fans feel the same way about that call against Michael Thomas, which the guy barely touched him, but put us in a position to make sure that we were first seed in the NFC. Maybe that week, the storyline for the reality show of the NFL was Drew Brees, with a record-breaking season, is number one seed in the NFC. That's what we want the storyline to be that week. Now, this storyline is We have $1 billion. Okay, I'm going to go full conspiracy now.
You mean you haven't been full conspiracy this whole time, Wendell? It sounds like
that's been generous.
I mean, you sound like Oliver Stone on steroids.
I know, man. I am. I'm Oliver Stone on steroids in Hard Knocks.
So let me ask you this, Wendell. Would you?
Okay. One other thing. You were talking about ratings. Yeah. What about that Coliseum being empty every week, and the team just being back there in Los Angeles for 3 years? I live in Los Angeles. I'm working in Chicago now, and I live in Los Angeles. That Green Bay game, nationally televised, it sounded like it was Lambeau Field. At the Coliseum. Well, there was nobody there, and you got $1 billion stadium there in Inglewood that you're going to have to fill, and that we're going to have a Super Bowl in 2 more years. We got to get them going.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.